Welcome to The Nexus Point, a podcast for next-gen accounting firms. Here's your host, Jeff Bruskin.
Welcome back to the Nexus Point podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Bruskin, founder of White Tiger Connections. On the Nexus Point, we talk about all things at the intersection of the CPA firm space, whether talent, mergers and acquisitions, technology, or something else. I'm privileged today to have here with us one of our clients at White Tiger, Noah Beery, Senior Director of Corporate Development and Strategy at Platform Accounting Group. Noah, welcome to the Nexus Point. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff. Appreciate you making time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's my pleasure. So maybe just to get started for our listeners, you could give a little bit of background into yourself and into Platform, if you'd be so kind.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So, Jeff, as you mentioned, my name is Noah Beery. I'm the head of corporate development here at Platform Accounting Group. I've been with the firm for about 3.5 years now. Prior to that, I spent about 3 years doing kind of traditional investment banking on the West Coast, primarily focused on leverage finance for financial sponsors groups. So for those that are less kind of into that world, that's private equity. And so I was actively putting together debt packages for, large private equity groups who were doing a lot of the similar things, in a variety of different industries. So familiar with kind of their practice, their investment motions, kind of thesis, what that looks like, et cetera. But for, some background on Platform, Platform is really a professional services company that was founded in 2015 by a gentleman named Reyes Flores. He's a founder, CEO. He really grew up inside of his dad's boutique accounting firm. From a young age was kind of filling the candy jar and pulling files, ultimately kind of handling client engagements and, said, hey, I want to go see what else is out there and, try kind of my hand at a variety of different avenues that aren't necessarily tied to the accounting space. And so, he left for a number of years, joined a couple of larger financial institutions, and in 2015, his father was falling ill, and also kind of coincided around the time where, he was seeing what it was like to work at a bigger firm and what it meant to be, one of 40 advisors around the table, and realized that, he missed that kind of intimate relationship with clients and having kind of that meaningful impact that you get really at the more boutique end of the market and serving, what those clients are and having a really kind of significant impact in their lives. And so in 2015, he decided to purchase his father's firm. And, since then, we really executed on a growth strategy, primarily driven through M&A. And so we've done 50 acquisitions that have consolidated into 40 offices in 14 states, and have really been able to kind of strike this balance between, all of the things that we love about boutique accounting, whether it's white glove level of service to clients, familial culture around the office, kind of autonomy of staff and not having this large, kind of bureaucratic organization, but being able to bring to those firms large firm capabilities. So, you can think of kind of fully integrated back office support, whether that's HR, benefits administration, recruiting, IT, finance and accounting, strategy, growth and ops, et cetera, and be able to bring that to our firms in a way that helps solve, some of the challenges that folks across the industry are feeling, but not doing so in a way that, really forces assimilation, that takes away all of the things that are great about being boutique and things that, clients have self-selected into, that staff have self-selected into, and being able to preserve a lot of that kind of autonomy and, white glove service and intimate client interactions that you get at that end of the market. And really where we've played and have found a lot of success is, in the boutique segment. And I'll use that term kind of throughout the podcast today. Well, what does that mean? And it means a lot of different things to different people. And as we think about it, it's, some quantitative things, size, and then also some qualitative things. And so, we kind of define it as really, 2.5 up to kind of 15 million of revenue, a handful of partners, kind of up to, 6 or 7 on the high end. And those are obviously the quantitative aspects, but from a qualitative perspective, it really has a lot to do with what is kind of the culture of the firm, what is, the community involvement, and, how are kind of clients and staff interacting, and staff and staff interacting. And I think that a lot of those are hard to put, numbers behind, but spending time with folks and meeting team members, et cetera, is really where you start to kind of build that cohesive, understanding of, yeah, okay, we've got that philosophical alignment here because you, by our definition, fall into kind of that boutique category and how we think about doing business and serving clients. So there's kind of an overview of platform, and
Yeah.
a lot of different dimensions that we can get into of, what are kind of those adjacent services, what is, kind of the growth opportunity, and how we think about that, et cetera. But, hopefully that's a helpful starting point for you, Jeff, to kind of take us away from there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's great. It's going to be an exciting episode because I think, CPA firms, other private equity firms, principals from maybe a PE or IB background that are interested in this profession. I just had a call right before this with a PE firm that's really interested in entering into the space that doesn't yet have a thesis here. So I think invariably platforms, movements, it probably has an effect on a lot of, a lot of players, whether they're already in the market or not, because, clearly 50 acquisitions successfully, you don't do 50 acquisitions without having them have been successful along the way. And, you don't get to that number without having a real macro, which is meaningful. So excited to go further. So you and I have gotten to know each other, I think, pretty well over the last couple of years. And for me, one of the things that I look for in PE firms that I introduce to, the limited number of really qualified sellers, boutique accounting firms that come across my desk, is this deep emphasis that I feel like Platform has on culture and fairness, which obviously are, hard, you talked about qualitative and quantitative, highly, qualitative topics like culture and, what the heck does fairness mean in a professional services business that's succession planning oriented. So, I mean, maybe you could go beyond the numbers with us a little bit and try to, talk about some of the ways that you can measure for those things inside of the firms you evaluate.
One just point of clarity, Jeff, and I think it's helpful for the listeners is, distinguishing between, a kind of a pure play private equity firm and platform, right?
Awesome.
We are a CPA firm, right? We are an accounting firm that provides, tax, consulting, accounting services for our clients. And that's where our roots come from, right? So instead of, maybe more of the traditional private equity approach of, I'm going to raise money around it and then go do it. It was, we're going to build this and then raise money around it to help execute on the strategy, to help fuel the growth.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
And so
You're right.
Want to kind of clarify that for the listeners that we are an accounting firm, right? Platform Accounting Group is an accounting firm that has investors that are not necessarily private equity firms, traditionally. But I think that that's a helpful distinction. And I think that that's actually helpful because of, getting into this question of, what are we looking for outside of just the numbers, right? And I think to your point of, finding a deep emphasis and kind of alignment on culture really is the number one thing that we look for, and finding that philosophical alignment with the firms that, we're evaluating and want to do business with, because at the end of the day, if you have alignment and you have agreement on the direction that you're heading, there will be bumps along the road. If anybody is coming to you and saying this is 100% foolproof, there's, no bump, this is easy, I would say tread lightly, because, we've done this a lot of times, and inevitably there are some speed bumps that come up along the way. And, if we can have that philosophical alignment in the direction that we're going, it doesn't necessarily matter how we get there, but the fact that we know we're going to get there, that's the biggest thing that we look for. And I think that this comes through, in the fairness in how we evaluate firms, because, at the end of the day, we have to work together, and we have to work together for quite a substantial amount of time in some cases, and in some cases indefinitely. And so, we want to be fair in how we're evaluating firms and how we're negotiating transactions, because day one, when the transaction closes, if folks have, a sour taste in their mouth of, hey, it feels like they really kind of crammed this down on me, or ran me over on this, that's going to set the relationship off at a deficit right out of the gate. And then we've got, a lot of proving out to do, and a lot of makeup, if you will, on that front. And I think that just becomes a recipe for a misalignment in that philosophy that we've explored and that we found. And so, you know, uh, obviously the numbers matter. I'm not going to sit here and say the numbers don't matter, because they do. But, I think the most important thing that we can find, and through our exploration process, is, hey, are we aligned on the direction that we're going? If yes, great, then we can kind of work through the other steps and the other items that come to play when you're evaluating a transaction.
So interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating. I can hear the seasonedness in how many countless conversations you've had with firm owners, and it just in between the lines of what you're saying. So that's cool, and I'm sure our listeners can too. What do you think is some of the main drivers? And I think you alluded to it right up front. I'm so glad you brought that up about being rooted as a CPA firm, not as a PE. And I think there's a huge difference in that. I mean, I right now, as of Q1 2025, when we're recording this episode, I have 20 buyers to one seller coming across my desk, and that's at all sizes, right? That includes the $250,000 top line revenue firms, all the way up to the $20 million revenue firms, but everything in between, right? Obviously, you don't get involved much with the former, nor do most people who are really serious about this space and the thesis and executing the kind of volume you guys have done. What do you think are some of the variables, Noah, that have allowed Platform Accounting Group to be so effective? I mean, if you've done 50 acquisitions, I can only imagine it's 500 plus firms in your kind of target size range, that 2.5 to 15 million that you've interviewed. What's made you successful in securing so many acquisitions?
I think the biggest, or one of the biggest factors is we've been doing this a long time, right? We did this starting in 2015. And so, there's been a lot of buzz and interest in the space from institutional capital, a lot of entrepreneurship through acquisition folks. Once EisnerAmper and once Centrin Cooperman got done, and that was like, oh wow, there's this new frontier of a highly fragmented industry that is now open. And it seems like there's a thesis and a path, with the Citron Cooperman kind of, investment with Blackstone, there's an avenue to return capital to LPs. And, I think that a lot of the things that those folks are doing right and thinking about in the right light, are helpful, but there really is just something about having a time-tested strategy, of having the proof points in execution, of having the people that we can say, hey, go call, folks that we transacted with and have a conversation with them. And we'll be very
It's
open
huge.
about who we put in prep. You want to talk to somebody who maybe didn't have as great an experience? Sure, I will connect you with that person. But having that time has also given us the ability to figure out what works and what doesn't work, right? And so all of the folks that are coming and joining us now are really the beneficiaries of that time and of the A/B testing, and, just being able to say, we've seen this before and we know what works when we run into and encounter this issue, because we've done it before. And so having just the ability to stand in front of people and deliver a message of, we're good at this, because not only do we have an M&A engine, right? We're not just going out and aggregating revenue. We also have a very robust integration team that says, okay, once the deal is done, we can really hit the ground running, and we're not stuck tying up all of these loose ends, because there's all of these things that we didn't think about, right? Like, one is, just the CPA designation, right? And we're structured under the alternative practice structure. We can't hold ourselves out as CPA designated. And some of the folks that I've seen make some mistakes along the way, they're closing their transaction, and all of a sudden their website still says, XXX CPA. That's a problem. You should start thinking about that before the deal. And so just having the reps, having seen so many different, issues that can come up along the way gives us a lot of confidence to say, if you're looking for a sure thing and you're looking for people who have done this before, know what works, know what doesn't work, don't trust me. Go talk to the people who have been in your shoes. And
Right.
I think that is really the biggest thing that helps us win out. And, our focus on remaining boutique and preserving culture and, just the whole ethos around, you went boutique. You could have gone regional, you could have gone national, but you decided to choose boutique for a reason. We want to help you remain boutique and continue to thrive in this changing and challenging environment.
Supreme. I think it's great. It's and that last point is really interesting too, right? I mean, you're right. Any firm that you guys acquire is being solicited regularly by top 100 CPA firms and wealth management organizations and probably a lot of other parties. And so there's got to be something a little bit different that they're looking for. And a lot of that, I think, is like we're talking about, is some of those intangibles. I think, it's interesting because obviously, Noah, the profession is going through this gigantic retirement boom right now. The silver tsunami, the baby boomer thing is happening, perhaps more profoundly in our profession than in, virtually any other. And so I think, it's really interesting. And I'd love to hear maybe a little bit about your recruiting strategy. I'm sure that's super interesting for our listener group. If you'd be comfortable sharing that on the succession planning side, because I'm sure so many of the firms that you guys bring in, they're looking to do a transaction because of that kind of lack of succession that they have, or insufficient succession plan. But also I'm really interested to hear about some of the younger firm owners, situations where maybe there's a 35 or a 45 or a 55-year-old managing partner who's, looking for, 5 or 10 or 20 years of runway, and what are the benefits to going with a firm like Platform, and if you could dynamically talk about a use case, a live one instead of a hypothesis, that would be great.
Sure. I think that, so there's a couple of questions embedded in there. One is around kind of recruiting strategy. What does that look like? Some of it is some secret sauce, but I think a lot of it is just being deliberate, right? Not relying on headhunters, not relying on people who, maybe have misalignment in their incentives, right? And so we built a function that all our recruiting team does is recruit reps, right? We're not selling recruiting services. All they are doing is recruiting for our offices, and they're really good at it. And, they're turning over all of the stones. Their focus is like a scalpel, right? What do we need? Where do we need it? And when do we need them there? And to your point of, some of the succession planning, that's some of the secret sauce, is building around the firm and the pieces that are in place to say, hey, we don't need to go out and wholesale replace, these people, because they've got up and comers that are there already, that are interested in more management, that are interested in, taking the next step in their career. But I think where the CPA and accounting profession has done itself a disservice is painting the picture of what that looks like for folks, where, historically.
Oh, well said. Yeah, it's true.
I'm going to take capital risk. Maybe I'm 40, 45, and I'm thinking, hey, maybe being a partner is a great opportunity, and that's the direction I want my career to go. But if that's the case, then the old model of coming into that and buying out, retiring partners and what are effectively unfunded pension plans, right?
Bingo. Yep, that's it.
Is not attractive to me, because I'm seeing how hard it is for them to transition. I'm seeing how hard it is for them to find a buyer. not only that, but I've just watched them work 100 hours, 80 hours a week for 40 years. I don't know if that aligns with my values or
Actually, I know that it doesn't, right? And that's what we see time and again.
right. And so you have to paint a different picture for people that are partner level caliber that say, hey, you can come to platform, you can build that management muscle because we'll help you learn how to be a leader, how to manage your team, but we'll also help offload some of the, uh, the brain damage that comes with being a business owner of, oh man, it's Saturday, payroll due on Monday. I better submit that in. Or, I need to close out my own internal book so that I can see, how I'm performing financially. Oh, and, there's all of this buzz and talk around AI. I should probably go look and see what's going on over there. But how do you do that when you're running a business, you're managing staff, you're managing clients, you're trying to do business development? And I think that going into the second piece of your question around, it's not just older people, baby boomers who are thinking about retiring. It's also that next generation who took the entrepreneurial risk and said, you know what, I went out on my own, I hung a shingle, I built a great firm, but I'm starting to bump up into these ceilings of
Yep.
growth where, growth is not linear. Growth is very much a step function. And I'm running into those steps where I need to think about capacity management. I need to think about hiring folks. My processes could use some refinement, exploring new technology that will attract the younger generation who are thinking, I'm not going to do tax returns on paper anymore. The technology has been created for a reason. How do I think about adopting new technology? And I think that for the younger generation of folks that are joining us, that's where they're really interested is what is your technology strategy? What is your recruiting strategy? How are you going to help me scale this at a rate that's really kind of further and faster when we're together than I could really do this on my own? And I think that we can tell a very compelling story because we have folks like that in our organization who joined us when they were 40, 45, who are now seeing, wow, this is, kind of gas on the fire, if you will, from an
Yeah.
exploration standpoint that is difficult, if not, untenable to do on your own.
Yeah, I see it. I think it's super intuitive, and it gives them it sounds like a lot of autonomy, right? I mean, I know this. I'm kind of cheating and asking a question, but maybe just a little bit more would be great to hear about some of that kind of the retention of the boutique structure. So I think for a lot of firm owners, selling is always about this concept of being lumped into something larger. I'd love to maybe hear you talk a little bit, Noah, about some of the decentralized autonomy that the firm, like, they get the benefit of the central nucleus, which is profound, and then the ability to continue running their own outfit, which I think is equally profound and yet somewhat, highly juxtaposed. Love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, one of our values and part of our mission is around, we invest in, happy, healthy workers with run at the ground level organizations. And so, we have local leadership in all of our offices that are really there making day-to-day decisions. And we've then kind of backstopped that with support. And so it's, hey, let's talk about strategy. Let's talk about the direction that you want to take your firm and the vision that you have for it. But know that when it comes to going and executing on that strategy, it's not you're out on your own. Hey, that's a great idea. You should go do that. We then have, the bandwidth and execution reps and horsepower to go say, okay, great. We're aligned on the direction that you want to go. Let us help you get there. And with our operations team to, do integrations and, help implement some light technology that we think is really critical and give you the data to manage from, a data-driven perspective and not, a lot of firm owners, they have a really good feel of their book and their clients, but that really good feel sometimes breaks down in that longer tail of clients where, how do you in your head manage 2,000 clients and know everything about them and know what you're charging them, what you charged from last year, how long it took you to complete. Well, what if we give you the data to go do that? And you on a daily basis can look at custom dashboards built for your office.
Be insane. You could probably double your revenue in a few years with the same base.
Exactly. It gives you the ability to make data-driven decisions. And in this day and age, that's everything. If you have the data available at your fingertips to know how profitable is a client, what did I charge this client last year? What are the resources that I needed for that? It makes it so that you're not hiring in arrears, right? You're not saying, wow, my people are underwater, I should think about hiring. It's, okay, I know that my target is I'm going to go try and grow revenue by 10%. I can do that a mix of price increase. I can do that a mix of new client onboarding, right? What does that look like from a data standpoint of, okay, here's a set of clients. If you want to do price increase on that, this is what that looks like. And then the rest of that can be filled with new business development. But as we think about it, we now need to add a headcount to fill that new business development.
And you have the team.
Exactly. And then, oh yeah, now I don't have to go hit up 10 headhunters and ask them to go run a process for me. And I'm the one screening 50 resumes, right? We can then put in front of you the 5 or 10 best candidates and say, these are the ones that we think are going to be really successful in this role. We would like for you to do a final interview for fit. Does this person fit in your organization from a culture standpoint?
Amazing.
And then from there, you can really kind of be off to the races. But it is, as you mentioned, it's a very delicate balance because there are some things that we have to have standard process around, right? We're a larger organization. We have to be locked down on data security and our, cybersecurity. And that's just something that we can't negotiate on. But there are a lot of things. And I think, what we hear a lot of times is, but this is boutique. And it's like, well, is that boutique? Is that what it means to be?
No, it's just antiquated. It doesn't mean it's boutique.
Right. And it's, again, because we have such an emphasis on that culture and, preserving what that environment looks like at the local office, we have to have a conversation around that. And we want to be open to feedback and alternative ideas and going different directions. But again, it's that delicate balance of, yes, we agree that this is a core tenet of being boutique. But again, having your clients pay you, 180 days past due, is that really boutique? Is that important to the culture, to your clients, to your staff? And I think the answer to that in a lot of cases is no. It's just, I haven't had the resources or the bandwidth to really optimize that process.
Yeah, spot on. So helpful. I think this is really a model it's like a lot of these larger firms, the $100 million, $200 million, $800 million CPA, for even $50 million CPA firms that I encounter, they're riddled with problems. For better or for worse. It's for worse, right? It's just true. That you guys, I mean, I don't know, your dirty secrets, but it seems like a lot of these you don't have because you built it in a way where actually I think more of a centralized nuclear structure enables the satellite offices to have just a better, more holistic experience, because a lot of these firm owner, the managing partners and the executive committees of the 50 million to whatever $1 billion firms, they all have different and competing priorities, right? Tax and audit and CFO services and valuation services and transaction advisory and IT and HR, they all have different objectives. And it's like the difference between the city that was built with grid lines and the city that was just built based on where people settled. One was designed, one was just conglomerated. And, maybe the one is more artistic if it was just where people settled, but it's not more functional, right? If we're talking about highest functionality, you guys really, it seems like, have designed this with the firm owner and firm staff experience top of mind, right? In a way that it still complements your nuclear body and thesis.
Well, and the client experience, right?
Talk about that.
Yeah, we really think of kind of our priorities in a pyramid, and we call it our prioritization pyramid. And you're spot on. The number one, the base and foundation of that are our high performing teams. They are the people at our local offices and making sure that they can work cohesively as a unit, that the people in their organization see the growth path and they see the trajectory of what their career can look like at platform.
Amazing.
And
Doesn't exist in the industry broadly.
correct. It's been a black box. You know, I am a senior manager or I'm on partner track. Well, how do I get to partner track? How do I get to leading an office? And a lot of times the answer was we had to wait for somebody to retire, right? What, that's not a good answer to the next generation who's looking for that career trajectory and the growth of where they want to take their careers. And so you have to be scripted on it and you have to be thoughtful about being a people first organization. And then what we think about is if you build that high performing team, the client experience will largely be taken care of because that means that the people that are servicing the clients are excited to come to work. They're facing challenges in the day to day that they know that they can overcome.
Not just checking boxes.
Yeah, they've got a robust peer network of folks that they can pick up the phone and call when they run into an issue. And, you know, if we have properly developed that high performing team, that client experience is going to be seamless. And then from there, you can start to think about, you know, what are the services that our clients are asking us for, where we can be more of a holistic place that all of our clients are getting, you know, the wealth management or, you know, the ERP implementation or the family office services or the client accounting services, right? All in one place where their advisors are all under the same roof. They're talking together, they're sharing information, and this will help drive superior client outcomes because
It's
it's
so true.
isolated boxes where advisors aren't talking to each other and they're working their own personal best interest, which no fault on them. That's human nature. But if you can bring it all together and focus on what is the ideal client outcome, what are we all working together to go drive, that's going to enhance the client
Value.
experience.
Absolutely.
And the team is going to feel rewarded because they know that their clients are getting, you know, the best care and the best support. And again, it's kind of this cycle of take care of the clients, take care of the staff, prioritize the staff, and the clients will be taken care of, et cetera, et cetera. And really this kind of wheel that just keeps spinning.
It's also more conducive to value-based billing, right? I mean, all of the CPA firm, like all of the coaches and the industry experts that I talk to, you know, CAS is the super sexy thing, and it is, right? Because it's stable subscription revenue, it's comprehensive service models for clients and blah, blah, blah. It's all super profound, but like, what's the next frontier after you get out of the seasonal paradigm of billing on the basis of, you know, project-based revenue, right? Well, it's accounting services, it's subscription revenue. Okay, what's the next frontier? And I think the next frontier that we're seeing more and more is value. You're billing on the basis of value. You're providing platform value. I mean, you know, pun intended here. And I think that, you know, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts to the client. It certainly can be greater than the sum of its parts concurrently to the firm that's providing that value. And yeah, it's just fascinating. And I think we could probably do a whole episode on that topic. I want to put you on the spot a little bit in a good way. As I said in the beginning, you and I have gotten to know each other pretty well in the last couple of years. And, you know, I think that you have this interesting sort of, you know, a profile that a lot of young people and even some older people who are in the kind of private equity profession might see as kind of an example. Would love to hear a little bit more about your journey, you know, what you've learned kind of stepping into this maybe slightly, you know, atypical pseudo private equity model. You're a CPA firm, but you're taking a lot of the good of the PE and you're leaving a lot of the bad behind. And I think that bad is often objectively bad. It's not just subjectively bad. You know, maybe you could talk a little bit about the success story for you and what it's been like, what kind of learnings you've had.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best place to start on that is, you know, where do I come from, right? You know, I went to the University of Utah, step one, right? State school, good school, not anything overly impressive, right? And I had set my kind of sights pretty early on from there of, I want to get into investment banking, and I want to do it at a large, recognizable institution. And what does it take to get there? And I think, for me, it was finding the right people, the right mentors, the right folks to help guide me in that direction, to give me, critical feedback. And I found that in Reyes, who's our founder and CEO. And so, part of the story is Reyes and I go back, um, almost a decade now, where he was my mentor while I was in college, and he helped me get into investment banking.
How did you meet yourself and Reyes?
Just mutual connection.
Awesome.
He was running a program, back then, that was effectively, hey, if you want to get into investment banking or consulting, or M7 kind of uh, MBA program, um, come talk to me, and I'll help you. And I've
Awesome.
done these things, and I can help you with the interview prep and with the resume and reaching out to people and connecting you across my network. And so, he was really helpful for me to ultimately get there. And then, once I got there, right, all of our clients were private equity groups, and everybody in my group is, dead set on going into private equity. And I was the same way, where, that was kind of the next natural progression in my career. You do 2 years of investment banking, and then you go into private equity. And I thought that was that's the direction that I want to take my career. But as time went on, I realized that, I wanted to get back to more of my entrepreneurial roots. When I was in college, I had a successful landscaping business, and I really enjoyed that, of building
Awesome.
a business and what are the motions of optimizing the business and looking at, how do I continue to grow and scale this business? And, I realized that that's where I wanted to get to. And I thought that, okay, I can come back to that. I can come back to that goal and that vision later. But right now, I need to focus on getting into private equity, because if I get into private equity, that means that I'm going to learn the skills that I need to be useful in a business. And maybe that means that I go get an MBA somewhere, and that's the direction that I go. And I went down that path, and I had a private equity offer at a great firm, and was thinking, hey, maybe this is it. This is kind of, I'm tracking on the path and the goals that I set out for myself. But at the same time, I'd stay close with Reyes. I was very interested in what was going on at Platform, because I saw it from, almost day one. When we first got connected, it was one office, and he had just acquired that office, and it was great. I was, all on board. I was a big cheerleader. We were touching base, a couple times a year, say, how's the business doing? How's Platform? How are you? How's your family? And it came time where, we were looking to raise some capital to continue on, our growth trajectory. And he gave me a call one day and said, hey, we're thinking about raising this capital. If we do you want to come back and lead M&A? And I'm, sitting there, an analyst at an investment bank. And I'm like, I have no idea what that means, but yes, that is exactly
Yeah.
what I want to go do. And, I got here and really continued to learn through osmosis. At, my first year, it was Reyes and I that were, going out and doing this. And then he kind of weaned back as, the organization grew, and his role evolved as a CEO. And, he's really stepped up into that role. But when you're, doing the CEO role, you can't spend all of your time doing M&A, right? There's so many other functional areas of the business that need your time and attention. And, my kind of ability to learn what this looks like, to negotiate the transactions,
It's huge.
disseminate the information, that just continued to grow. And it,
Huge.
finally came time to take the training wheels off. And it was, this is you, this is your functional area, this is your role. And, I have been fortunate to continue to have people around me in the organization who, continue to teach me, who, help in so many areas, where if it was, I'm trying to do the HR integration and the IT integration, the ops integration, right? Those are my skill sets. And, we've got such a great team here at Platform that, we've all kind of focused on the direction that we're going, the mission, and that makes my job easier and makes it so that, at the ripe age of 28, I can go out and lead M&A and be someone who's, out there representing the organization and finding the best firms across the country to bring in and come join us and help us build and scale.
You've demonstrated that, right? I mean, that's for sure. It's amazing. Any advice, as you think about others and maybe ways that they could take some of the lessons? I mean, it sounds like a combination of luck and being in the right place in the right time and recognizing something special when it was put in front of you. I'm just curious about any advice.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. Like I attribute a lot of this to luck, right? It's right place, right time, right people. But I
Yeah,
think that you can skew your outcome of luck by putting yourself in those places, by
so true, man.
having those conversations, by building a network, by finding people out there who are genuinely interested and invested in your success and staying close to them. It's that the old adage of, your network is your net worth is 100% true. If you surround yourself with people who are interested in helping you and people that you can in turn help, I think that is the most powerful self-help book that exists, right? It's go find people who you think you can add value to, who maybe somewhere down the line can add value to you, but don't go into it with the focus of how can you add value to me? Take it of how can I add value to you? And I know that this will come back around and it will put me in a position to find success later on. It is, I think you look at my story and it's, yeah, that's spot on where it is. And the last piece of it that I would say is, if you have a vision or you have a goal that you want to set out on, follow the path less traveled. And a lot of times you're going to see very, unique results that if I went to private equity for 2 years and I went to business school for 2 years, I would probably find myself in a similar seat that I am today without having to go through those. And so if you've got a vision in your mind and a direction that you want to go, just jump in and follow it and run after it as fast as you can. And, good things will happen if you put the time and investment into that direction.
It's great, man. There's so many life principles, like really, really profound concepts there that we could unpack further. But thank you just for sharing that. I mean, clearly very personal and it's great. So it's so relatable. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I think whether it's blue collar or white collar or parenting or any, I mean, there's so many gems in that you just shared. So thank you. That was great. I wanna kind of conclude for today with a bigger picture sort of question. There's all of this conversation. There always is, right? We're always looking, 3, 5, 10 years out, trying to anticipate for what's going to happen. And I think that there's two trends that you and I, Noah, have discussed a lot in different forums. One is this, incredible wave of consolidation, which is happening right now, largely on the back of the baby boomer retirement wealth transfer that's happening, and business changing hands is no exception, to that. The M&A, monumental thing. And then on the other side, you've got technology and what's happening with AI and I mean, incredible processing power and client service optimization, project management optimization, the elimination of, what you might have taken 100 staff to do, you could do with 5, right? I mean, these are things that are very real that we're projecting in the next handful of years. I'm just curious where, a firm like Platform, you guys are sitting relatively high in the, in the castle of positioning, and I'm less interested, personally in what you guys do. Do you sell? Do you hold? What happens there? I'm interested where you see the space. Where do you see it moving in the next 5, 7, 10 years? What do you think the environment that we're heading into as we close out this decade and we start the next one? What does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, I think consolidation is going to continue, right? There are still people sitting on the sidelines who really want to get into the accounting industry, and they've got a lot
For
of
sure.
capital to go do it. And so I think that consolidation will be a continuous trend. I think that, much like dentistry, if you will, where, DSOs have been prevalent for 20 years and they've rolled up everything under the sun, there's always that kind of next generation or those younger folks who say, I'm going to do this my way. I'm going to build a great business. And then when it makes sense, maybe I'll go explore what it looks like to partner with somebody or, sell a portion of my stake to somebody. And I think that will also continue to occur because you've got folks that are, partner track at the big four or, a top 10 firm who are saying, maybe there's a different avenue here. Maybe it makes sense for me to go hang a shingle and build my business. And I've seen this in a number of cases where, they're leaving those big accounting firms and saying, I've seen a lot of things that they do right, but I've also seen a lot of things that I think I can improve on. And when you're starting out from zero, you get to build the business in the direction that you want it to go. And having that kind of next generation of entrepreneurs in the accounting space build great businesses, is something that will continue to be a trend that will continue to, drive that consolidation because you're right. You've got, 75% of AI CPA membership that is eligible to retire 2 years ago, right? And that will turn over with time, but you also have this pool of up and coming talent and entrepreneurs who are going to be.
Nobody talks about that, right?
It's quiet. It's quiet. And I don't know why, because they're building phenomenal businesses. Some of the businesses that I've seen from, 40-year-olds, 45-year-olds, it's you are building such a streamlined, process-oriented staff and client first organization that you're doing everything right that people 40 years ago just didn't have the insight into. It's not that they did something wrong. It's that when they started their firms, that was the status quo. That was bleeding edge then. But it's 4 years now, and maybe you lagged in adopting technology. Maybe you haven't really thought about, really fostering an environment where your people can grow and thrive within your organization. That's what folks are looking for now. And if that's your focus, you're not turning a cruise ship around in a bathtub. You're building the perfect firm with the specifications that you want that will turn out to be an absolute winner. So I think on the consolidation side, that's something that's super exciting for us. On the technology side, AI is the buzz, right? It's driving public markets, it's driving private company activity. You're seeing just massive funding rounds for these kind of AI companies. And, I'm a firm believer that it's real. It's, at this point, I'm using ChatGPT every day and deep research, the new tool that came out to help me, analyze an end market that a client is serving, right? And, I think that that's very real. But with that being said, I think that it still has a ways to go, right? It's not coming for your jobs tomorrow. It's not going to, replace a bunch of jobs in the accounting space next year or the year after, because I think the way that I actually think about AI within technology, and, we've spent a lot of time internally having this conversation is, it's not a replacement, right? It's more of how can I make what you're doing more efficient so you can actually spend more time thinking about the client, right? You're less focused on
So true.
inventory or pulling, last year's tax returns and collecting, all of the information that you need from the client. That can all be streamlined and automated, right? But what you then put yourself in a position of is, how do I really provide advisory services for my client because I have the time to do that? And taking away some of the more manual, integrated kind of process type of activities that are going on and replacing that with, hey, we've got that part taken care of. Let's have you spend your time thinking about what is the end goal for the client? What do they need in 5 years? Not right now. What do they need in 5 years so you can be really that advisor that our clients are relying on us for? They're not relying on us for, and a lot of times, to just punch numbers into a tax software. they're coming to us because they want our guidance and advice. And I think that AI will put us in a position to be able to give better advice or more frequent advice where you're saying, hey, let's touch base quarterly, let's touch base twice a year because I have time for that, right? And thinking strategically with your client where they're going to go and how am I going to help them get there along the way. That's where I think AI becomes a really powerful tool in the accounting profession.
Fascinating. This has been great. Noah, thank you so much for joining. This is super interesting for me. I love the time that we get to spend together. I always feel like I leave learning something new and with 5 new ideas about where to go from here. I have an introduction I'm going to make to you. It just came to mind while we were talking here. So this has been great. Thank you for your time and excited to see what platform comes up with next.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you having me on and appreciate our relationship and looking forward to many more successes ahead for both of us.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for listening to The Nexus Point, a podcast for next-gen accounting firms. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. See you on the next one.